Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Are we waiting for somebody or can we just start?
Yeah, good evening, sir. We will start in 5 minutes, sir.
Okay.
I hope I'm audible clearly.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, Shanawas. Yes, Shanawas.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. So very pleasant good evening to one and all present here. I, Shanawaz Sayed, a student of third year Information Technology Department, and all the staff and students of GH Raisoni Institute of Business Management Jalgaon, an autonomous institution affiliated to KBC NMO Jalgaon, welcomes you all for this wonderful session on the topic technology trends and opportunities for IT students, organized by Computer Science and Engineering, Information Technology, Data Science, and Artificial departments. I wholeheartedly welcome our special guest, Dr. Vinay Kulkarni sir, learned professors, and all the distinguished invitees, and thank them from the core of my heart for accepting our invitation. Moving further, I would like to introduce our today's resource person. Our today's resource person is Dr. Vinay Kulkarni sir. He has done his BTech in Mechanical Engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and PhD in computer-aided manufacturing from IIT Bombay, and is now guiding companies, institutions, and individuals to develop competency and capability in the areas like machine learning, big data, and data analytics. He is the director, faculty, and mentor of AJ School of Data Science, Mumbai. He is the proprietor of VK Consulting and Training. He had been an adjunct professor in Mechanical Engineering Department at IIT Bombay. He had worked with companies like Geometric Limited and Larsen and Toubro. He has covered tools like Python and R for data analytics and machine learning. He is currently focused on consulting, capability building, and importing education in the areas of machine learning, data analytics, and big data technologies. Really appreciating, sir. Now, I would like to hand over the mic to Dr. Vinay Kulkarni, sir, to start with the session. Before that, I would like to tell all the participants to please stay on mute for the smooth conductance of the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shahnawaz. Can you just once confirm that you are able to hear me clearly?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction and good evening, everyone. I see there are about 45 people for this session. Welcome to this session, and I hope you will get something significant out of this. I'd like this to be a bit interactive, so if I ask any question, please feel free to type away your answer on the chat window. That will make it more interactive. Like Shahnawaz said, if you can keep your mic on mute, that will help. Otherwise, there will be chaos. So let us use the chat board as our means of communication, right? Let me share my screen. Can you confirm that you can see my screen? Can one of you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, great. So as you can see here, the topic for today is technology trends and opportunities for IT students. And when I was requested to give this talk, I was wondering what to speak on, because I normally speak on machine learning and artificial intelligence and big data, like you heard in my introduction. Also Internet of Things, and I have been involved in conducting courses for IIT and other institutions in these areas. But I thought, let me make the topic, what is it that is going on around us at this point in time? And what kind of engagements? I will not necessarily call it as a job, because that seems very narrow in the context of today's opportunities. So I will not just call it as a job, but would like to refer it more broadly as opportunities that are open to us, right? So since you are already into your program, probably for 2 years or 3 years, and like I had these questions when I was a student myself, I'm sure most of you will have, or some of you will have, these questions. Why did I get into this program? Why did I get into IT? Why did I get into the specialization that I have chosen? What do I really like? You heard that I am basically a mechanical engineer. I love mechanical engineering, but I also like computers quite a lot. So, over the period of time, I have slowly made a shift from basic mechanical engineering to applications of computers in mechanical engineering. So I have not left my core competency, but at the same time developed additional competency. So anything is possible is what I would like to tell you upfront. And it is very natural to have these kind of questions. What should I do? And most importantly, where will I get more money? Right? I'm sure this is also one of the questions foremost in everybody's mind. And then, if you decide something, like for instance, right now, the in thing is, let us say, AI and ML, right? Since you are IT students, probably you already have got introduced to this. But in general, many people outside also want to get into AI and ML. And in my experience, I have seen people coming in from arts background, commerce background, science background, engineering background, people who are fresh out of college, people who are experienced to the tune of 25, 30 years experience, right from age 21 to age, let us say 60. People would like to get into some new areas. And then the question that naturally comes up is it for me? Okay. So these are some of the questions, hopefully we will get answers to, right? So, at this point in time, let me ask you all a question about what is it that you have in mind for yourself? Why have you chosen IT? Let us get some answers on the screen in the chat window. Let me prompt you. The answers could be as simple as I want a good job, or I really didn't know what to do, so that's why I have taken this subject. All these answers are perfectly fine, but let's get some answers. So the question to all of you is, why are you into IT? I hope people can type out their answers. Shanavas, can people type their answers on the
Yes, sir,
chat
they
window?
can, they can.
Okay. So guys, come on, let's have some quick answers. Interesting technology, soft skill. Okay. So Rutika English says it's a soft skill and it's also interesting technology. Okay. What else? I see 46 people and only one answer. Blooming career financially, persons remains fine. Okay. Shanawaz. Okay. Obsessed with technology. Yeah, great, Yadish. To improve the world. Okay, Ketan, very noble thought. Come on. Let's have a few more answers. Okay. So I hope even if you have not answered, you are clear in your mind about why you are pursuing a particular course, right? But I'm sure this happens to everybody, that at this stage in your program you definitely have these questions. Which job should I take up? What are the skill sets that I should have? How should I approach the whole thing? What does it mean to my career, right? So let us try and look at some of the answers that probably exist out there, right? So what I would like to tell you is, when I was at your stage, probably my life was a bit more, what do you call it, less confusing, because there were less opportunities. Okay. So I tell you, when I was a student and when I was passing out, we had this concept of some dream jobs and dream companies, right? Dream jobs and dream companies. Okay. And probably the choice was not very large. So I would say choice was limited to a great extent, right? So we had a few companies like, let us say, Schlumberger, and then you have L&T, and we also had TCS at that point in time, and Infosys, and so on and so forth, right? So these were some of the companies that people aspired to join after they completed their program. Okay. And of course, we had a few disciplines that we had. You have computer science, you have mechanical engineering, you had electrical engineering. And the trend when I was in my last year was that most or all of these students wanted to get into software. Why? Because, like one of you mentioned, the life is set. If you get into software, the job is good. You don't have to struggle too much, and the pay is also good. And maybe you get to go abroad. These were some of the criterias that were prime when I was in college, right? And I'm sure you have your own criteria right now. Probably, getting a good job or a dream job in one of the dream companies still remains one of the prime concerns that most people will have in this particular audience. And this could still be companies like TCS, Infosys, then you have a couple of more, Tech Mahindra and so on and so forth, right? Who will come and who will recruit the students, right? But actually the landscape has gone a sea change at this point in time, right? So I will say here that landscape has completely changed. Okay? Has completely changed, right? The first thing that I would like to bring to your notice is that there is definitely more choice. More choice in terms of areas, more choice in terms of companies, more choice in terms of the way you want to work. We all know that the pandemic has resulted in its own methods, evolution of methods of working, right? And there are so much more possibilities. The only problem is the more choice leads to clear, or you can even say hazy, right? So let us have one of these three answers: clear, not clear, or hazy. Okay. So we have two answers coming up. Both of them are saying yes, it is very clear to them. Okay. Three people coming up. Okay. Good. So if you are clear, then let us understand what is the kind of job that you want to do, in which area you want to do. I mean, at least these four people who have responded, maybe you can just write down your preferred area of work, data science. Okay. Right. Yadish says data science. Who else? Rutika, Yadish, Ishwar, Shanawaz. What are your choices? Software development. Okay. Right. What else? It's not surprising, right? If you are from IT, then obviously your choice is going to be software development. Some people are more concrete in the sense, more specific that you want to do in the work in the area of cloud or artificial intelligence. Okay. So let us look at now, by no means do I want to scare you at any point in time. So when I raise a problem, I'll also give a solution. Okay. So I just Googled, like many of us would do when we have a question, and Google threw up, these kind of jobs, which are commonsensical, and which is what a couple of you who have responded also mentioned. Right? It could be IT manager, support specialist, security administrator, technician, network administrator, big data engineer, so on and so forth. Right? So these are the kind of jobs that have existed in the past for IT people who specialized in IT. Okay. And I suppose everyone would know this because I'm sure everyone would have Googled and got the same list, right? As some of you mentioned, artificial intelligence and machine learning is the obvious area of choice. And this I kind of anticipated. So I have put it in the slide over here. Why? Because it is an exciting field. It's an upcoming field. It is paying well, a lot of opportunities, and there is immense scope for learning, right? So we all know that artificial intelligence is like a big umbrella, and inside that there is a smaller umbrella, which is machine learning, which today is the face of artificial intelligence. And of course, then we have very specific techniques which are covered by deep learning, and people aspire to get jobs related to some of these areas. And these days, the hot field, even within AI, is probably deep learning and all that it can do. GANs and audio and video and image related tools that can be developed. And this is not without reason, because AI adoption by organizations globally is really very large, and it is expected to grow with huge investments being thrown into artificial intelligence and machine learning. So those of you who have said that you want to work in this area of AI and ML, you're not saying without reason, because inherently these are some of the big opportunities that are existing today, right? Now, let me also highlight that moment you say AI, ML, some of you also mentioned software, right? What is the danger? The very fact that today we have artificial intelligence and machine learning, actually this itself is becoming a danger to coding jobs in these areas, right? So you must have heard about these terms like low code and no code. And if you just look for the startups which are active in this particular area, you'll see so many companies who have come up, So you have companies which offer tools like Big ML and Auto ML and so on, which I have also used in my work at many points in time. So what do these do? I mean, what are the dangers? So when you say software, okay, the question that you need to ask yourself is, what kind of software are you referring to? Even if you are talking about AI and ML, what is it that is going to happen to AI and ML programming in the near future? If you go by some of the projections that we have over here, we have certain projections made by companies like Forrester and also by companies like Gartner and Forrester, who predict that close to 64% or 75% of the coding very soon will be done by platforms which offer low code or no code, right? And what is the reason for this? The reason for this is very simple, because AI and ML today, the way people understand it is, let us say, a few Python libraries or libraries in any other language. But the underlying foundations or fundamentals of AI and ML is nothing but statistics, right? And this is the more difficult part of understanding AI and ML. And since not everyone can be an expert in statistics, efforts are on to encapsulate all the decision making into these low code or no code tools, right? So, so my suggestion to those of you who are wanting to get into artificial intelligence and machine learning is that it's not that your skill in software or your skill in artificial and machine learning is going to be useless, but you will have to repurpose yourself in the sense of trying to understand what do these platforms have to offer, okay, and how you can add value over and above these platforms so that you become or you remain relevant, to the job that you kind of take up, okay. You may have some of the questions, but we'll take up the questions towards the end, right? Some more examples, which establish the trend is something that we call as the GitHub Copilot, which actually helps you to code. So while it is not no code, but it helps to develop code. Okay. So even people with less knowledge or less skill in coding can use tools like GitHub Copilot to generate the code. And what is it that drives GitHub Copilot? Again, this is driven by AI and ML related applications, right? So as you can see, AI and ML is feeding on itself. Okay, there is a huge mass of code available out there in GitHub, solving various kinds of problems. Okay, and you have AI and hello. Okay. Okay, can you confirm you are able to hear me? Can somebody confirm?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Yeah. So what I was trying to tell you is that GitHub has a phenomenal repository of code, and that code is being processed by AI and ML, which in turn helps to develop more code. Okay, so it is code understanding itself to develop more code. So when you say you want to do software, and this is not true only for AI and ML, very soon this will be true for any kind of system development where software is involved, right? You will have very sophisticated tools, and we are not far from there. Maybe it's a matter of a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years before we have very sophisticated code generation tools coming up. Let me give you a small story here, actually. See, when I got out of college, okay, we had the Windows operating system coming, right? Windows operating system. And before that, we had the DOS operating system, okay? And, we were all used to working in the DOS operating system. And when Windows came up, the whole model or the paradigm of programming changed, right? From character-oriented interaction to Windows-oriented, mouse-oriented interactions and so on. And, then you had to develop these Windows applications. So which involved creation of the menus, creation of various portions of the Windows and all that, right? I remember that when I wrote my first Windows program, and this was in probably 88 or 89, 1988 or 89, it took us, or at least it took me 7 days to write my first program, okay, and get it working because it was a new paradigm and everything, right? So this activity of just being able to create the Windows was considered, high skill activity, right? But also let me tell you that within a year or two, I think it was even just a year, the same program, which I took about 7 days to write, could be automatically created in half a minute. Okay. Which means people just did not have to worry about how to create these programs, how to create these windows. They had to worry more about, okay, now the window is automatically created by code generation tools, and at that point in time, we had tools like Borland C++, okay, and Visual C++. Of course, this came up much later on, or C and C++. And there were a couple of other tools, which very soon gave us the mechanisms to do in half a minute what used to take 7 days, right? So something similar is happening to software development right now. Because of the existence of a huge repository of code from which learning can happen, tools are getting developed which help you to generate code for specific applications in lesser and lesser time, right? So what are the advantages of tools like this? Of course, there will be less mistakes. You can do coding without knowledge, pre-trained with data sets of code. So reliability is there. Overall, reduced development time, okay, and the different kinds of problems that can be solved, right? So probably in a year's time, when you will be passing out, or in a couple of months' time when you will be passing out, it is your knowledge about what these platforms do, okay, which will be of more importance than your knowledge of, let us say, languages like Python or Java or JavaScript. Okay. I'm not saying that these won't be important. These will be the sanity things. Of course, you will need to know them. But in addition, you need to have knowledge about these, low code or no code platforms, because from a job perspective, those will be also very important, right? So these are some additional things that you will have to learn, okay? And the more earlier you start using them in your projects, or actually do projects where you create an opportunity to use them, the better will it be for you, right? So I think this is the last slide on no code. So we have here that according to Gartner Magic Quadrant, 65% of applications will be done on no code or low code platforms by 2024. Okay. And the huge thing here is productivity gains. And like we saw here, there are so many benefits which accrue by use of these platforms. Okay. Now, the reason why I am telling you this, or I brought this up, is that this is just one example of how the ground might shift from beneath you. Okay. What I mean to say is that only knowledge of programming, okay, only knowledge of programming, whichever language you choose, okay, will not be sufficient. Why? Because tools will take up that, right? So what should be your contribution? You should try and develop expertise. Okay, in use of those tools, and more importantly, so I will write in those tools, and most importantly, in some domains, right? Because this is the one which is more difficult to acquire. Let me give you an example. So even when we talk about low code or no code, right? Today, the problems that can easily be converted to low code or no code solutions are those related to, let us say, images. Okay. So, understanding faces or detection of faces, understanding handwriting, detection of seams. If you look at the generative adversarial networks, GANs, okay, conversion of images from one style to another style. Yeah, these are some standard problems which can easily be converted to low code and no code solutions. Okay, but if you say that you understand the domain, let us say you understand cyber security, or if you understand some other engineering domain, let us say you develop expertise in non-conventional energy, okay, or if you develop experience in banking and finance, right? These are more difficult to replace. These are more difficult to capture and convert into low code or no code solutions, right? So what is my suggestion? My suggestion is understand your basic interest. Understand your basic interest. So if you haven't asked this question, ask it now. Okay. And take up and do projects in these areas. Okay. What this will ensure is that you develop domain expertise in one or two areas, okay, which also happen to be your area of interest, right? And then you can convert it into your long-term career goals. Okay. So just to re-emphasize that if you just know programming, or if you just become an expert in Python or one of the languages, you can be easily replaced. You can easily be replaced, not by another human being, but, by a program itself. So what you are doing today can easily be done automatically by an AI and ML system. So the question that you have in front of you is, what expertise should I gain? In which domain should I become an expert so that I am not easily replaceable? Okay. So that is one of the questions that you need to ask. Okay. Now let us also look at some of the other opportunities. So, again, I come back to the fact that some of you mentioned generic things like software or generic things like AI and ML, right? Are there any other opportunities out there which you may not be aware of, or which are just about raising their heads, and which you should be aware of in the near future because they may become really big? And in the next couple of minutes, I will take up a few of these technologies so that at least these are there in front of you. Probably most of you would know about all of these, but then give a thought to these things which we will be discussing very soon. But before we proceed ahead, are there any questions that you want to ask at this point in time? Are there any specific questions that you want to ask at this point in time?
Sir, I was having one.
Yeah, go ahead, Shanawaz.
Sir, as you said that by 2024, all our software development or...
No, Shanawaz, not all. Yeah. All is a very dangerous word. So,
yes,
okay.
Sir.
So,
means
you can say
80
most.
to... Yeah, most of.
Right.
70 to 80% we can say.
Right.
Will be done by some robots, we can say.
Correct. Yeah.
But sir, I think that we would have to train that robot to write that piece of code, or just develop a software. So we would have to train that robot. So human efforts would be there. So can we just not say that all humans or most of the humans would be replaced, or some of the humans may be replaced by this? Because some humans would be training those robots. So
right. So what is happening now, Shanawaz? In fact, what is going to happen already has been happening in the past. It's not that these things haven't happened in the past. The only thing is the rate of progress or rate of technology development has accelerated in the last 30-40 years, right? So if you go back, again, I go back to, let us say, my college days or when I started working. Okay, database management systems, for instance, or SQL as a skill, right, was very, very important. Even today, it is important, right? But then you have, second generation language, third generation language, fourth generation language, fifth generation language. As the generation of the languages improved, more and more code was automatically developed based on templates, right? And you are right. People were involved in developing these templates. But now what is happening is, because there are tools or there are code repositories like GitHub, and let us say even if you look at AI and ML problems and their solutions on Kaggle, for instance, for that matter, this is all ready data available to be passed through some AI ML system, which can abstract it and which can then understand the context. So it is just like, in these days, when you type emails, you don't even have to type the full word or the phrase, right? At least in Gmail, you get auto completion. And sometimes entire phrases are completed for you, right? So similar things are happening already, even in the context of tools like Copilot, GitHub Copilot. Auto completion and structure of the code, all that which is learned from already existing code will be available to everyone. Okay, so the best of distilled code will be made available to everyone, right? And the role played by humans will probably reduce over a period of time. Okay. And the reason why I brought in domain knowledge is that, if domain related solutions do not already exist in GitHub, and it is very difficult for domain specific domain related solutions to get into GitHub. Those are the areas where we can still be relevant. We can express our creativity. Mundane jobs of converting the algorithms into code will be automatically done by tools. Does that answer your question, Janavas?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay. Yeah. Any other question? Please ask, because the more interactive it is, the better it will be. Otherwise, I can keep on talking, not an issue. Okay, so let me go ahead. So what I am going to do now is highlight some of the areas where opportunities are coming up, right? So the way I have gone about it is, it's a different style that I am using these days to make it more interactive and to focus people's attention, right? So which are these areas? So some of these areas are, first of all, areas like, for instance, quantum computing. Okay. I am sure as a term, you have come across quantum computing at some point in time or the other, right? But the big question is, do we understand it? What is it? Okay. What are the programming models that quantum computing requires? What happens to the algorithms? Which are the tools which are available? Which are the platforms which need to be learned? Okay. And if you read around, you will find that more and more companies or startups are working in the area of quantum computing. And this will probably in a few years' time become mainstream. Okay. So if it becomes mainstream, the question is, are you ready? Right? So today it is cutting edge. And already we see all of these things happening. Tools are getting developed, models are getting built. Okay. But the basic understanding of quantum computing and what it means, requires a little bit of knowledge about physics, quantum entanglement, and all of that. And, trying to develop an understanding and knowledge of that will definitely help. Okay, so it is like this. See, suppose if I want to fix something, let us say I want to fix a tap in my bathroom, right? I can fix it like a technician without bothering about the, actual source of the problem. I can just take care of the symptom. Or if I truly have an engineering mind, I will try to get to the root cause and say that, okay, if there is a leak, why is that leak happening? Okay, what is the root cause? And an engineer is more likely to get into that and understand the root cause than a technician who might just come and maybe put a Teflon tape and tighten the tap a little bit. The leakage will go away for some time and it will come back again. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is that you can do quantum computing and programming for quantum computing using just the APIs that the toolkits make available. Okay, but unless and until you understand, let us say, a domain like this, it will be very difficult for you to make full use of the capabilities. And it is very clear that quantum computing is going to be very relevant in the future. Okay. Right? So if you do not have this in your radar, maybe you would want to like to spend some time trying to understand what is quantum computing, because more and more job opportunities are coming up related to quantum computing. And it is not only AI and ML, AI and ML are there, they are getting mature. In fact, standard code generators are already available. right? But if you get into an area like quantum computing, the job opportunities are more niche at this point in time, but they will increase over a period of time. And anyone with knowledge about quantum computing is likely to, have a higher value in the market, right? So quantum computing is one of the areas of focus. Okay. There are so many things that are happening around us. Like, for instance, let us take blockchain. And this is something I suppose everyone would understand or at least knows what blockchain is. Okay. But do you really understand blockchain? Do you really understand what we mean by smart contracts? Do we understand what we mean by public ledgers? Okay. Blockchain is getting relevant in the health domain. It is getting extremely relevant in the supply chain management domain. As we all know, there is a cryptocurrency which is already based on blockchain, right? So it is very clear that again, this is a technology of the future, right? And big companies are involved, and most importantly, many startups are coming up, and there will be opportunities related to blockchain. So again, the question is, how good are you at understanding blockchain? Would you like to get into it, right? So that you are riding the wave of some of these emerging technologies. Okay. Let us move ahead. Since we are talking about blockchain, we should also be talking about, let us say, the non-fungible tokens. And there are one or two items related to the non-fungible tokens and what is happening in that particular field over there. So let me try and highlight them. Okay. So let me take up this first of all. Okay. Now, what has an IT engineer got to do with non-fungible tokens? I'm not saying you should become an artist. I'm not saying you should create an NFT yourself or sell it in the marketplace, right? All that I'm trying to tell you is that this technology is related again to blockchain. It is one of the applications, right? And in the last 2 years, the amount of money that is spent on non-fungible tokens and in the non-fungible token marketplace, has been phenomenal. And you have a lot of applications and tools getting developed. Okay, applications and tools getting developed, and this is your opportunity, right? As IT engineers, okay, as software developers, if you have knowledge of what is an NFT, what is a blockchain, and how to implement this, okay, your gateway into the world of startups which are related to these emerging technologies, these gateways open up, right? So see if you can take up projects in the areas of NFT application developments, or even do something which helps you to understand what NFTs are, what is the marketplace like, what are the emerging trends in non-fungible tokens, and which tools are getting developed, and whether you would be interested in some of those tools. So, just like cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency related companies, there are so many companies in India now, right? So NFT related companies also might come up in the future. Okay. So this is one of the areas to be looked at, right? There are so many other examples. Like, for instance, Walmart is investing heavily into NFTs, right? I will also show you what is the source for all of this, because that is more important. And I'll spend 2-3 minutes on giving you how to keep track of these technologies. Because what I have taken up today here for discussion, again, is an ever-changing list. You never know tomorrow which technologies will come up, right? So non-fungible tokens and related technologies are one thing. Now there is something interesting also happening, and this again you must have heard. There is something called as the metaverse, right? In fact, as you all know, Facebook has changed its name from Facebook to Meta. Okay, so this is virtual. It is like a game, but you have marketplaces getting developed here. This has its own currencies which are getting developed. Okay, and NFTs are relevant in the case of these metaverses, because here you will have assets which people will create and own, right? And all this requires software and tool development. Right. And also let me tell you, all the earlier technologies that we discussed, whether it is AI, ML, whether it is blockchain, okay, all of these are also relevant to these newer platforms, tools, and technologies that are coming up, right? So what does it mean to enter a startup, or perhaps create your own startup in the area of metaverse, okay, which caters to this huge market that is expected to grow at phenomenal rates, where digital assets are created, digital currencies are created, a digital marketplace is created, right? If you go into the world of metaverse, the boundary between real world and gaming and virtual world really breaks down, and people earn in the virtual world, convert the money into the real world, and vice versa. So many things are actually happening, in metaverse. And it is not just about gaming. Like for instance, we have Hyundai, which is actually using metaverse. So if I take this, so this is put to some real use. They have announced a partnership to create tools and technologies for Meta Factory, which can serve as a training place for smart manufacturing. As I mentioned, you can see AI training and study over here, driving and simulation, selection of automobiles, cars, and so on and so forth, right? So this seems to be, again, a great future opportunity. Well, it is not entirely future. It is already here. Companies like Facebook, Microsoft, and as you can see, even manufacturing companies like Hyundai Motor Companies, these are already jumping onto this bandwagon, and this is likely to create its own demand, right? What else? So let us take a few more before we can get into the question answers, right? A related area, people have been talking about data analytics and so on, and machine learning. But if you look at this, the field of data engineering, okay, which involves sourcing data, conversion of data, architecting data, so that the artificial intelligence and machine learning activities can happen, okay. That is becoming huge now, because unless there is enough data which is properly made available to AI and ML algorithms, probably you all know that data scientists typically spend a huge amount of time, 70, 80%, sometimes even 90%, trying to get the right data and in the right format. And only then they can do their AI and ML activities, right? So a data engineer ensures that a large part of this gets automated. Data is sourced properly, the required data is extracted from it, architected, stored, and then make it more usable for the rest of the community. So data engineering as a career is likely to pick up in the near future, right? Let us take one more. Okay, I will take up this one and then open it up for questions and answers, right? So let me show you this. I started my talk by saying that, in the past, uh, the life of students was relatively simple because you only had a few companies which were your dream jobs, right? But if you look at this now, the startup scene in India, especially in the last year, has really hotted up. Okay. There are so many unicorns, I think more than 80 unicorns, which got created in the last year, which means as job aspirants, your choice is not no longer limited to only the big companies which are involved in services, and I'm referring to great companies like TCS and Infosys and Tech Mahindras and so on and so forth, but also companies which are more active in the new technology space, and these are likely to be more agile, right? So keeping track of where are the startups, which areas are the startups coming up, okay? What skill set do they need, okay? What kind of experience do they need? What kind of domain knowledge will be useful to be able to, let us say, get associated with a company like this, would be definitely very important as you go forward, right? So again, the message that I'm trying to convey over here is that there is so much more choice. Okay, and like I said, choice may lead to confusion. So how does one solve this problem? Okay, you will always have this question, is it for me? Right? You will always have this question, is it for me? Okay. Should I get into metaverse? Should I get into cryptocurrencies? Should I get into blockchain? Should I get into, let us say, AI applications for drones? By the way, the government has announced huge support for drones in the current budget. So keeping track of what the government doing also is really very important, right? So this is the basic question that everyone will be asking, right? And the answer to this is yes. Okay, let us understand that given the right amount of interest, and I can cite my own example, that my basic education is in mechanical engineering, but because of my interest, I migrated to software, application of computers in manufacturing, right? And, I could develop software which brought together engineering and geometric reasoning only because of my basic training in mechanical engineering, right? So being interdisciplinary, okay, is key in these times. So these days, when I see people from arts, science, commerce, also interested in some of these newer technologies like AI, ML, IoT, I see that there is a confluence of disciplines. People come with various ideas from these disciplines, and it is from interaction between people with various domain expertise or domain knowledge that you can come out with really innovative products and solutions, right? So I think I will stop here. We can spend a little bit time on Q&A. But the essence of what I was trying to tell you is that today we are no longer limited to the conventional jobs or the conventional ways of doing things. But a whole lot of new and emerging technologies are available. They may appear daunting, but the best way to tackle them is jump into it. You have your time still. Take up projects, significant projects, understand your interest areas, try to do significant projects so that when you go out and you either seek a job or you understand the domain so well that you can probably start your own startup. And there are investors out there who would be willing to fund you, provided your idea is good and you can prove that the market needs your particular solution. Okay. So don't think only AI, don't think only ML, don't think only software. Understand that many things are getting automated, and at the same time, new areas are emerging where you can gain your expertise in the remaining months or year that you have at your disposal. And the important thing to do is just sit back and think about what are your core interests and spend your time doing projects so that you can convert those interests into your career. Okay. So I will stop with this, and if you have any questions, we can take up a few questions and answers. So you can probably raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can also put it on the chat window.
Yeah, so it was a very wonderful, knowledgeable, and excellent session, sir. And if any participant is having any question, he or she can unmute themselves or can put the questions in the chat box for the same.
Quantum computer simulators work well. From the simulation point of view, anything can be kind of done, right? The answer to your question, I can probably convert it into a slightly different question and say that if you look at parallel processing or multiple processing, okay, you can write a program which is meant for parallel processing or multiple processing, and yet it can run on a computer with a single CPU. Okay, we can take the example of tools like Spark, for instance, which is a big data tool. Okay, so that can be made to execute on a computer with a single CPU. So likewise, quantum computer, which actually spans across multiple states and is based on a concept. It is statistical in nature, and it is based on the concepts of quantum entanglement. It can always be sequentialized, and simulation can always be done on a normal computer. That is not a big problem, right? The bigger challenge is, of course, when is building a quantum computer, ensuring that it is stable, which is where companies like Google, IBM, all these companies are involved in at this point in time to make it more affordable. That is a bigger challenge. Does that answer your question, Yadish? Simulation is always simple, no problem. Okay, any other question? Okay, so actually what I said, I'll take 2 more minutes, and what I want to tell you is, with all these things happening, how does one keep track? Okay, I'm sure you have your own mechanisms, right? But let me quickly show you what I do, and this is just one of the ways of doing it. Okay, so let us say, are you? Okay, yeah. Can you see my screen? Can somebody confirm?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now this is one of the methods by which you can keep track of what is happening and not be overwhelmed. Right. One of the excellent source, which is an Indian source related to new technologies. I find these 2 magazines really very useful. AI Analytics India magazine and what is happening on Analytics Vidya. I like them more because not only do they cover, the field of upcoming technologies what are the startups, where the investments are going, who's appointed as CEO, and how many jobs are there in what kind of domains. All these, you get articles related to these, and particularly in the Indian context. Okay, so I keep a track on the articles that they put out. Okay, and I use a simple tool like Feedly for that matter. This is Feedly that I'm using here, where I can aggregate information from various sources, and on a daily basis, you can skim through, let us say, about 50 to 100 articles. You can bookmark whichever you are interested in for later reading, right? And that is how you keep track, right? So there are a couple of more. I will not want to confuse you. You can explore and find out. But at least from the Indian context point of view, both for technical information as well as non-technical information, if you can just follow the Analytics India magazine and Analytics Vidya through a tool like Feedly, Feedly, you can create an account. That will help you to keep track of what is happening. And if you do it daily, over a period of time, you will automatically start understanding what is happening in which field and where you need to focus. Okay, so that is one small input that I wanted to give you, right?
Yes, sir. So, sir, before presenting the vote of thanks, I would just like to ask a small question.
Yeah.
That will RPA, robotic process automation, work along with software development for in our career, like
Right.
the tools with Orchestra or Studio X?
Yeah,
Will
see,
it work?
what happens whenever you talk about automation is, as you go along, the low-hanging fruits, they are first converted into, they are first automated, right? So run-of-the-mill activities, if I can take some examples like searching, sorting. I also mentioned, let us say, image analysis, image conversion. Wherever these tasks are involved, since they are well understood and there is a huge body of code already available, they can be easily converted into automations, right? What is more difficult, of course, is anything that is domain specific or anything that is new, right? So since I am from manufacturing background, being able to understand what is a defective piece of equipment or what is a defective part just by taking its image, may be a more difficult problem to solve and require more effort, right? And this is where the specific software, specific algorithms will have to be written. Okay. And over a period of time, when many of these cases are also covered by the software that we ourselves write, then that becomes a candidate for automation. Okay. So if you look back, this is how we have made progress, right? So I give you the example of Windows program writing. Obviously, many of you probably will not know at all what is meant by Windows messaging loop, right? Because there is no need to do that. It's all automated. So when you go into a tool like Visual Studio, you don't even think twice. You start an application and the application comes with all the menus and the rudimentary windows. Okay. That did not happen overnight. People wrote code and that code got templatized and then that got converted into automation. So some similar processes will be always going on in RPA. There will always be tasks at the two ends of the spectrum, at the easy end of the spectrum and the difficult end of the spectrum. And obviously the difficult end of the spectrum will require human intervention.
Yeah, got it, sir. Thank you, sir. So last but not the least, I would like to thank our special guest, Dr. Vinay Kulkarni, sir. who, despite of his busy schedule, has found time to grace this session with his valuable knowledge. And I also express my heartfelt to Miss Sonal Patilman, HOD, CSE, AI, IT, and DS departments. I owe special gratitude to Ms. Priti Agarwal ma'am, Director GHRI BM. Last but not the least, I thank all the distinguished invitees present here who accepted our invitation and attended the session with utmost patience and attention. I hope all the students would have enjoyed the session and learned something new which can upgrade the knowledge. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you, Shanavas, and wish you all and everyone in this session all the best.